Mirëmbrëma dhe mirë se vini në kallëzo për një me. Wade Goddard është fotografi i njohur ndërkombëtar i cili vjen me ekspozitën e tij të parë të fotografive që i ka bërë gjatë luftës në Kosovë. Jo vetëm Kosovë, por në gjithë vendet e Jugosllavisë, por Galeria e Arteve e Kosovës për herë të parë ja organizon një ekspozitë të fotografive që i ka bërë gjatë luftës. Wade, welcome to Kosovo. Congratulations on the exhibition you opened last night. As a part of this, there's going to be a book also launched in Albanian. Tell me, I want to start off our conversation with your first photos in '98, the first photos you did in February '98, starting from the ones we see on screen.
It was the first time I ever came to Kosovo. I came with Chris Hedges, a journalist for the New York Times, and he had pre-arranged this clandestine meeting through contacts in Switzerland that were in contact with, this new secret KLA army that nobody really knew anything about. We arrived in Pristina. We had instructions.
This is February '98.
February '98. We had instructions of what to do, where to park, who to meet. We did some driving circuit of Pristina to make sure that we weren't being followed. Met up with some other taxi driver who led us somewhere in Drenica. I don't know where. I've never been to Kosovo before this period, so I really only knew that it was somewhere in Drenica. And we went off a main road into a little stone road, kind of forest, into beginning of a village. A car stopped in front of us, and from the trees on the side of the road appeared uniformed, masked guerrillas with armed Kalashnikovs.
And when did you understand that you were in front of Adem Jashari's house?
Still, I don't even believe it was his house. Mm-hmm. I don't believe we were even in his village. We might have been in a neighboring village.
I'm saying this only because the legend of your 11th of February photograph, which we see now on screen, 11th of February '98, says that these are Kosovo Liberation Army Adem Jashari protection detail of the leader, Adem Jashari. Yeah. So,
I mean, this detail, these guys who came out and checked us, they checked us. They checked my photo bags to make sure that I didn't have any weapon. They checked us before taking us into the compound, where we sat down with a bearded man who then claimed that he was Hamza.
Okay, so you met with Hamza Jashari?
No, it was Adem, but we didn't know. He claimed that he was.
Oh, so it was Adem, and he said he's Hamza.
He said he was Hamza, and he wasn't Adem.
So tell me, what did he tell you?
Well, it was all in Albanian, and honestly, Chris was doing the interview, and I often find myself as a photographer tuning out and thinking about, how am I going to take this guy's picture? Where am I going to be? And
so did they allow you to take his photo?
In the end, at the end of the interview, I requested a picture, and he was adamantly no way. And I begged basically I needed something. We needed a picture to go with the story.
So did you have a translator with you?
There was a translator, but I don't remember who it was.
And you don't remember what was said in the interview? How was the atmosphere? Okay, just tell me about atmosphere, because 11th of February in '98, meeting Adem Jashari, this was one of his last days before he died a month later.
Well, I remember talking with Chris afterwards and discussing that they seemed to be a little more organized than we expected. They seemed to be a little more organized than anyone else knew. There was the feeling that there was already a command structure within this guerrilla force. So Chris was pretty impressed with what he heard and everything. And Chris truly believed.
Chris Hedges was the New York Times.
He was the New York Times bureau chief for the Balkans. And he truly believed that things were going to escalate extremely quickly. He smelt it before it began, and his meeting with Adim confirmed what he believed.
So you made it with this photograph. It was published in a New York Times, the one with masks, the masked men. What impression did that give to international community? It is one of the first photos of the KLA.
It was the first picture of the KLA taken by a foreign photographer and published in the foreign media. Colleagues, I heard rumors afterwards and accusations from colleagues, particularly in Belgrade, who were adamant that we falsified the entire story and there was absolutely no such thing as the KLA. They didn't exist. Only to find those same critics even a month later in Pristina covering the story of the KLA. So,
in the beginning of the war, the armed resistance, the formation of the KLA, they were criticized for looking too much like a terrorist force. Even the U.S. ambassador at the time said quite a controversial statement, which said KLA is a terrorist organization. Do you remember how did they transform into being accepted as a liberation force more than a terrorist organization? How did that image-wise transform itself?
They very quickly, obviously they had someone preparing them for what I call the media war, you know, because Kosovo Liberation Army, you know, it sounds, you know, you don't call a force that you're trying to promote in the West the Mujahideen or something like that. It has to have a liberation, freedom, something in its title. So you know, they were directed for the PR. Somebody was doing that properly, and they transformed very quickly. I even remember at one stage there was a discussion of a salute, what was going to be the official salute of the Kosovo Army. And there were different ideas from perhaps different commanders, I don't really know, but I remember taking a picture of 3 young kids in a village somewhere standing on the side of the road saluting, you know, with their fist in the air as we drove past. And only a few days later to hear that the KLA has now banned that salute, and that will not be the official salute of the Kosovo Army, and they took on a more traditional salute.
This transformation clearly happened under a lot of influence from meetings with you guys, international press. What is the vibe you were getting? I mean, as I understand that, I appreciate that the journalist was the one doing the talking, you doing the picture taken, but tell me about the atmosphere. Having come from Bosnia, what did you see different in Kosovo? Because you had covered the war from April '92 in Mostar. What was different about Kosovo?
Kosovo was really quite a different war compared to Bosnia. You know, Bosnia was an area of control up into a front line. No man's land, an area of opposition control. And that area of control only moved through battle, and there was no ability to cross from one area of control into another. Not like Kosovo, you know, you drive out of Pristina, there are Serb police everywhere. You drive towards central Kosovo, there are Serb checkpoints, but there are also KLA checkpoints that spring up here and there. They might be there when you drive past in the morning, and on your way back in the afternoon, they might be gone. So there was no solidified areas of control. is completely fluid. A village that is completely controlled by the KLA in the afternoon, in the morning, doesn't mean that Yugoslav National Army tanks and a convoy can't turn up at any time at will. You know, there might be some opposition, but everything was completely fluid, so it was very, very different.
If we go, I mean, one of the pictures that shows that is this, the Serbian army under an umbrella, the Serbian police under a beach umbrella in Rahovec, where it's town, they had taken it over, but the next day they may not be there.
You know, I think up until that point, the Serbs' security forces had always had control over the towns. They lost control in the villages, in Drenica. They didn't feel secure there, but this was, I think, an effort to contain control in the towns. And I think at this particular town, they had temporarily lost control of it and sent extra forces into the town to retake control. But you know, again, control is a very loose term. When you control a town, what does it really mean? These guys were under sandbags in the main street, sheltering from the blazing sun under an umbrella. For the moment, they controlled the area around them that they could see. But in a neighboring house, it could be any KLA guy. You know, they didn't really control anything.
How can you explain the amount of access that international media had on covering the Kosovo story? After all, these were Serbs who had gone through war in Bosnia and in Croatia. What were the lessons? It wasn't like international media was favorable to what they were doing there. How come they allowed you to film?
I never understood why the Serbs allowed us complete and entire access to Kosovo. Today it remains a mystery to me. Perhaps it is because of what happened of them basically losing the media war in Bosnia and their approach in Bosnia towards the international press was much more constricted and is controlled as much as it could possibly be, giving way, of course, to major media influences, sometimes the likes of BBC or CNN. You know, they had a little bit more freedom to do work on with the Bosnian Serbs than other smaller media companies. But in Kosovo, perhaps they figured that we lost the media war in Bosnia. Perhaps if we give them freedom to do their jobs, perhaps we'll gain favors because of allowing them under a democratic regime. If we allow them to do their jobs, perhaps we will also gain a more positive view from the international press, which of course turned around to bite them on the arse. I mean.
Yeah. Soon after the February pictures you have and meeting with Adem Jashari, a month later, here you are filming the bodies from the battle of Jasharis. On 11th, you have done these photos on 9th of March. I'm interested to know, did you understand then the weight of that meeting and the fact that this man would become legendary and his house a pilgrimage? Potentially the house you went today is a pilgrimage visited by so many.
In fact, it was exactly at that time, looking at Adem's body, that I realized that the interview that we'd been at months before, that I realized that it was Adem that we were talking to, and wasn't Hamza.
So you recognized
recognized him, and then realized that we were actually having an interview with Adem, and it wasn't Hamza as he had said he was.
Can you explain the house where you were? How did it look? Do you remember the house where you met him?
Yeah, but we weren't even in the house. We were in almost a barn. There was no furniture. It was very old structure.
Okay, so he didn't meet you in his Oda.
No, there was no house, there was no kitchen, there was no furniture. We were basically sitting on wooden boards in what felt like a barn. And that's why I believe that we weren't even perhaps in his village.
And Chris has just published the interview with Adem?
Yeah. I mean, you think this guy also doesn't know who we are. You know, we could be agents of Mossad or CIA or.
Didn't they check you?
Well, Switzerland checked us.
Switzerland checked you.
Of course.
Yes.
But you know,
of course, you were cleared.
We were cleared by Switzerland, but you know,
who
he
in
doesn't
Switzerland?
know.
Do you remember?
No idea. I have no idea. Chris, that was Chris's thing. But
so when you met, you didn't have exactly. You thought you're meeting someone else. He told you a different name. He didn't know who you're meeting.
Yeah.
How many people were in the room? How many people were around him?
There, I think, if I remember rightly, he had a couple of guys outside. Maybe one guy inside in the back corner, standing around. There was Chris, myself, and a translator, whom I can't remember who it was, but I'm sure when they see this, they'll be annoyed.
Hopefully they'll tell us who they are. After this, you saw the bodies. You notice it's Adem who you met. The Serbs were making a whole show out of this catch.
They cut the head off the snake in their ideas, you know.
What impression did that leave on you, again, compared to Bosnia and Croatia? Had they done anything like that in Bosnia?
Of course.
Like expose the bodies to the press and saying these are terrorists?
There was always, you know, prisoner exchanges and body exchanges. So there was already plenty of pictures of bodies that were killed and towns that, you know, were.
But arranged by police who would kill them and then arranged to be seen by the media and filmed.
Not me personally. So I can't really say if it did happen or if it didn't happen. Most of the time when I saw something like that in Bosnia, it was them. It was the same people preparing their people for burial. You know. There might have been a massacre of 27 people from this village. Those who perpetrated the crime were long gone, and we were there immediately after as witnesses. But there wasn't the killers presenting the prize.
I want to go to a region in Kosovo where not a lot of photographers made it. You are in Shkelzen Mountain in northern Albania on June 98, 6th of June 98. The last photo. Next to the mountains, it's clear that the mountains of Albania are across in this photo. It's a really interesting photo because not many journalists went all the way to the mountains of Albania to find refugees. A lot of them were just covering central Kosovo because it was difficult to get to. Do you remember access to northern Albania?
Well,
before
I can tell you that we didn't go there to find refugees. We found them, but that's not why we were there. We were looking for the route of weapons and KLA recruiters coming from foreign outside countries. This is the route that they took through Tirana, northern Albania, and over the mountain. That's why we were there. That these refugees were there was probably because that was the only way they could get out at that time. And they came out the same way that all the weapons and new recruits were going in. At this time, and another story I actually haven't told so much, Chris was somehow aware that there was to be a large movement of troops into Kosovo, and so we went.
KLA troops.
Yeah, we went there looking for this, and nobody wanted us to be in the press. Not the KLA, certainly not. But anyway, we went there. We rented 2 donkeys, and we sat on these 2 donkeys, and we climbed all the way up to the top this plateau.
On donkeys, sitting on
Yeah, me and Chris on donkeys. And we went all the way up to the top of this plateau, looking for where this route will be. And interestingly enough, the top of this plateau is a little bit flat, and it has one like bulldozed section where it's taken the top off, and it's the marker. That's the border between Kosovo and Albania. There's no real physical except for this bulldozed road. And we spent all day alone with our 2 donkeys and our donkey owner, waiting to meet someone, something to happen. I went walking, I crossed this line, I got sniped at.
Sniped?
Someone shot at me.
You think by Albanian side or
No,
the Kosovo side?
It was definitely from the Kosovo side. Mm-hmm. It was even perhaps Serb special forces hiding up there. Yeah. They weren't trying to kill me, they were just trying to say go back. Mm-hmm. And we spent all day up there. It was getting now, the sun was going down, so we gave up, we took our donkeys, we went back down to another big plateau, and when we hit that plateau, there must have been 5,000 troops, soldiers, ready to go. We were immediately taken under arrest. These
5,000
felt like
Serbian troops?
No, KLA. They were
crossing the border to Albania?
They were just massing to cross, waiting for dark.
In Albania?
In Albania. It still wasn't dark enough yet.
Okay.
And we came down onto this plateau.
5,000?
I felt like 5,000, but it was certainly more than 3,000. It was somewhere in there.
This was June 98,
yeah.
Again? Close to when you took this photo?
This was this time.
That trip, yes.
Yeah. So,
took you under arrest.
They basically took me under arrest. But it was just, you guys are going to sit in this car, and you're not even going to look out the windows, of course, which means I couldn't take a picture. I had a guy watching me the entire time. Mm-hmm. I couldn't take any pictures. But, for Chris it was golden. He doesn't need pictures.
And he wrote the story.
He just needs to see it, I was sad, of course, that it didn't have the images, but...
Were you released?
Oh yeah, as soon as the path was clear, as soon as the guys moved and started moving towards Kosovo and they were no longer in sight, there's your car, off you go. So,
in June 98, can you remember the details of how they looked? Because the soldiers I met inside Kosovo were hungry, homeless. Over here in Albania in 98, I hadn't been there. Were they clean cut? Were they ready? Did they look trained? How did the KLA look in 98 coming in from Albania?
I mean, these are new recruits. These are guys that haven't been shot at yet and don't have any experience at being shot at. There is a picture somewhere of a bunch of recruits having a break on their bus trip from Tirana to northern Albania. And these guys are probably from New York, some of them. Or,
yeah?
Yeah.
Did you talk to any of them?
Yeah, that's how I know. They all spoke English. Some of them from Europe, perhaps even Germany. Oh, here it is. Here we go.
It is.
Here we go.
Okay, date is 1st of May, 99.
Yeah. So this is even later, more recruits coming over, and these guys, they buy their own uniforms even. I mean, and then they get to the north, maybe Bayram Suri or somewhere close by, and they get some quick training and some weapons. So now
we're fast forwarding to the time of the NATO bombing, and you came out of Kosovo and started covering the war from Albania, from Bayram Suri.
First we went to Belgrade. On the evening of the bombing, I was working quite closely with Ron Haviv, and Ron Haviv had a death sentence on him by Arkan.
Because of the photo he did of Arkan.
Yeah, because of the kicking Muslims, dead Muslims in the streets of Bijeljina picture. So, and Arkan had publicly stated on state television that he was going to drink the blood of the photographer who did this. Anyway, so we heard rumors on the evening before the bombing in Pristina that Arkan had brought himself and his troops to Pristina. And I was still in, am I going to stay in the bombing or am I going to go? I really didn't know what to do personally for myself. And as Ron doesn't drive, and he was always, anyway, hanging out with me, that was, the decision was made for me, you know, I was going to take Ron out of Pristina, so we went to Belgrade, only to find out that actually Arkan was in the same restaurant in the hotel that we walked into. He was actually there in the restaurant, he wasn't in Pristina at that day. So after spending a couple of days in Belgrade, I think it was Vucic or Šešelj who kicked all the foreign press out of Serbia. We went to Zagreb, and then from Zagreb down the coast to Dubrovnik and back into Podgorica. And from Podgorica we were going up to Rajaj, to the border with Kosovo, and photographing people, Kosovars being thrown out of Pea and all of that region. Mm-hmm. And I think we spent maybe 19 days in Montenegro before crossing into Albania in the south and going all the way up to Kukës.
So how was the atmosphere in Kukës, in Bayram Curi in particular?
Well,
what happened to you in
Kukës, poor, you know, I mean, the poor people, both Kosovars and the residents of Kukës, you know, it's remote. There was no motorways up there. It took almost 2 days to drive from the coast to get all the way up to northern Albania. And these people in Kukës, they didn't have the facilities or the ability to cope with what was about to happen. And on a day after day, you know, the amount of people that were crossing that border increased every single day. Fortunately, the international community was able, with UNHCR and all the other agencies, were flying stuff in with helicopters. I mean, there was not enough food, there was no tents, there was at the very beginning, there was nothing. These people came in their tractors and they slept in their tractors. And if they hadn't brought with them the food that they could carry, they wouldn't have been able to eat.
Having been there myself during these 3 months of bombing, I know it was very difficult to cover the war because our equipment were being stolen in the hills next to Bayram Curi. How did you cope with this, and how did you navigate as a journalist this security situation, an additional to the refugee crisis going on and to the expulsion of Kosovo Albanians by the Serbs?
Although northern Albania was very much out of control of any government of Albania at the time, Kukës was relatively safe and free to work and do. But if you wanted or needed to look outside of the refugee crisis and were looking to do something more with what the KLA was doing during that time, then you had to go to Bayram Curi, because that's where that was operating. And
how was Bayram Curi?
It was always a gamble. It's like Russian roulette almost, because the chances of being robbed and losing all your equipment, your vehicles, or even worse cases, were very high. If you were going to go to Bayram Curi and work out of the hotel, which was called Hotel Smell of the Mountains, I remember going there once much earlier, and they had to get the goats out of the hotel so they could open the hotel for us. A completely crazy place.
But at some point you hired
you need to hire your protection, and,
yes.
and in fact what you're doing, although your protection consists of a four-wheel drive car, something like a Toyota Land Cruiser, the driver and his Kalashnikov, you're actually paying him not to rob you. And as long as that contract is being paid, you're safe.
So your equipment was safe then? You weren't robbed?
As long as he is hired on a daily basis, I think we were paying like $250 a day per car driver, and as long as you kept paying him, you were safe up until the day you left.
And were you robbed?
We were robbed, and we knew, of course, that there was a very high chance that we were going to get robbed, and we really did our best to avoid it. Leaving the hotel, never telling actually our drivers or our protection what we were doing. Leaving the hotel because we arrived in our cars to Byram, Surrey, and we put our cars under a security compound that we paid for to be looked after, and we never saw our cars. We drove in our protection detailed cars. But when we snuck out of the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning and picked up our cars and loaded them back at the hotel, all clandestine, trying to keep as quiet as we could to leave Byram, Surrey back to Cook's. On the way out of Byram, Surrey, 3 o'clock in the morning, we ran into a roadblock, which was a car blocking the road, and two masked men came out of the side of the road and emptied their Kalashnikovs across the top of our roofs. I mean, we were so prepared for it that we even had Tirana policemen with us. I had a policeman next to me in the front seat with a gun, and so did the AP crew in their car. But these policemen were terrified, and they took our cars with all our equipment inside. The only thing they didn't take was the Kalashnikovs of the policemen, and we were left on the side of the road 2 or 3 kilometers outside of Byram, Surrey, with nothing.
In your pictures of Kosovo refugees, I want to go back to what you filmed while you were here. Which are the ones that, let's say, the events that left the most impression on you from a body of work that is being published in your book?
It's funny how personal life and can mix with professional life. In January 1999, I took 1 month out because my wife gave birth to my first daughter, my first child. So that's the only piece of the story I don't have of the Kosovo conflict, and which was actually when Račak massacre also happened. So I don't have any photographs from that because
for good reason, very good reason.
I was in Zagreb. I took the month out, and immediately on my return, I returned to Cook's. But now I'm a father, and I spent, 2 weeks or 3 weeks with a newborn baby, and my whole perspective as an individual completely had changed. And seeing, these poor people exiled from their homes with big families and no certainty of not just tomorrow, but even the next half an hour, how they're going to look after their kids, and mostly just women, because the men were either too afraid to travel with them as they were exiled, or were in the KLA.
Or some killed.
Or killed, exactly.
In Krusha, where they left for
they kill the men and send
only the women left.
Yeah, they said.
The rest was
so you have these, and then my focus then became on parenting and caring, or the inability to do so.
Less soldiering, less photos of soldiering.
Yeah, and very orientated towards kids and mothers trying to care for them. And it did have a marked effect on me. I remember also, it was also quite soon after I was robbed in Byram, Surrey, and I was photographing. There's even, I think, one picture of lots of hands trying to grab bread that was being put out of the back of a truck. I remember this one. So soon, this day for sure, and soon after this picture, I found myself sitting on the side of the road alone. I mean, there's chaos going on all around me, but I was alone, crying. And one colleague came up and took me away. It just overwhelmed me. And it was again this personal fatherhood that I had just entered into, and having a much more emotional connection with the people I was photographing, the parents, the mothers trying to look after their kids.
You very stubbornly covered Kosovo throughout those 3 months and entered with the Germans through Prizren.
That's right, yes.
And you start photographing what happens inside Kosovo then.
Yeah, it was a mix of joy and disappointment, I can say. The joy to see finally these poor people that I had been photographing as exiles being able to return home. And that joy was joy for them, and their joy at being able to come to return, and basically knowing that they had survived it, you know. Quickly turned into, you know, I can say that I understood, but I was still disappointed at the revenge that happened next. I wasn't surprised, and to be honest, I didn't really expect anything different than what happened, but I was kind of disappointed, you know. I believed that, or hoped that perhaps the lesson that they just went through and the hardships they just went through, they wouldn't be so easily and keen to do to others what they had just been done to them. So I was a little bit disappointed, and I did spend a lot of time covering Serb villages being razed to the ground, and most of them had already left, and their furniture and belongings.
And I see Roma homes being burned as well in your...
Well, you know, the Roma were accused of choosing a side, accused of choosing the wrong side, but also some Roma were particularly targeted because they had perhaps been assisting the Serb security forces with information. So the Roma became also a target.
I want to go to your current role, because you are beyond a journalist today. You have decided to create a legacy of this coverage of war by opening up a museum in Dubrovnik. Tell us about that, because Kosovars very recently can travel without visas. They weren't able to travel before last year. What are you doing in Dubrovnik, and tell us what can be seen in your...
Okay, so yeah, this project, I've been working and doing this for the last 20 years. Excuse me. In fact, and it's the thing about photojournalism and about photographers. They're storytellers, and all they want to do is tell the story. They want to understand the story, and they want to tell the story through photography. And the only medium for that is newspapers, magazines, and now, of course, digital media. But that's only a small piece, and there's not how many pictures can you put in a newspaper? How many pictures can you fit, you know, in a magazine? So the idea was to have a place where the photojournalist can tell his entire story. You know, I have a space that you can put 64 photographs in, and what I like to do is find photographers who has a comprehensive story of a recent ongoing conflict that is most of the time not so prominent in mainstream media. For example, now is the Burmese armed revolution that's going on now and has been going on since the 2021 coup. So they have the opportunity to tell their story directly to the public without the intervention of editors and other people's narratives being pushed on them. The photographer is an interesting guy because in order to do his job, he has to be there. Unlike a journalist who can telephone quotes or a news presenter who often finds himself standing on the top of a hotel building.
Not only that, but in time you worked, in 92 and 95, you even needed to develop film in war conditions. How did you do that?
Not only develop, but you know, we didn't have today's technology. So we were developing with C41 films in bathrooms with generators, with electricity. If there was electricity, we also had generators, but we had satellite telephones that they were so big that you needed 2 people to carry them. That's how big they were. Now,
and how were you sending photos?
Well, we had
back to the editorial office.
It was even really before laptop computers. So we had machines that you could put your negative into, and it would scan the picture. But it would take 8 minutes times. So it would take at least 8 minutes to send on a satellite telephone, to send an image to London or to wherever.
And roughly, do you remember how much did a minute cost on satellite?
I do, because you know, once in Tuzla, I went to Tuzla to do the Srebrenica, the fall of Srebrenica, and I drove 24 hours to get there, with leaving Zagreb at midnight because I had to wait for the satellite telephone to come from London. And I drove 24 hours to get there, and I was exhausted. Anthony Lloyd was there before me and gave me a photograph that I sent. And I set everything up, the satellite and everything. So now I'm already awake for almost 2 days. And with this machine, you would send a picture, but 3 different colors. So first you'd send red, and then you'd send blue, and then you'd send yellow, yeah?
And they'd bring it together?
And it brings it together at the machine at the other end in London. But between each separation, you had to push a button, you know, that would come up on this little screen, press any key to continue to send the next one. I woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning with this little screen in front of me that said, press any key to continue.
So it has been going on.
I had an open satellite telephone line for 7 hours, and the cost was something like 60 Deutschmarks a minute. So the bill, it was Reuters, the bill must have been in the tens of thousands of Deutschmarks. But the next day I had every single front page almost in the world. So they didn't mention a thing about it to me afterwards. I called them and said what had happened. But
was that the photo with the most impact?
No. Actually, the picture I was trying to send, I didn't even send it in the end. It was Anthony Lloyd's picture. But the next day, you know, at 6 o'clock in the morning, we were.
What was the Kosovo picture with the most impact?
For me, I don't know. For me personally, the most impacted picture was the story of the massacre of the Delhi family. Obria.
You were one of the very few journalists there.
Yeah.
Ron Smith came afterwards in terms of video for the BBC, but you had Aubrey massacre photos come out in the papers.
Yeah, I was working for Newsweek at the time. Rod Nordland, who was the journalist at the time for Newsweek, he was there before me. We weren't working together. He was there before me. He took with his own camera just a snapshot of the baby that had the doo-doo in the mouth with a bullet hole in the forehead. He took that picture, and he pushed for that picture to be on the front page of Newsweek, and it was.
And which was the picture that you
I have pictures of the two sisters that I found in the trees.
Are they here?
There is the picture. There's a picture of 2 girls and a mother.
It's 27th of September, 1998. Gentiana and Donieta Deliaj. Next to this one.
So yeah, those were published in the same story of that was with Rod Nordland's. There, this is this picture, but that's them. It's hard to see on this, of course, but that's the two girls and their mother.
We will add this.
Yeah.
So there are two pictures that you shot on 27th of September that made it out of Gentiana and Donjeta Deliaj with their mother, who lays there executed by Serb special police on the morning of 26th of September in Obrije Poshtme. And the legend that you've put next to it is that Serbian special police retaliated to the killing of 5 policemen on the 25th of September by killing 21 civilians in Obrije, belonging to the family of Deliaj from Obrije Poshtme on the morning of 26th of September. Among these were 9 women and children. How many of your photos, your Kosovo photos, are digitized and archived? In the last few minutes we have, in the end of the interview, I want to talk about your initiative and the Ministry of Culture initiative to get you to digitize your material, publish your material.
Well, myself and I know for sure many other photographers, you know, we have our archives, and in those days it was all negative. And my archives are all in negatives sitting in a cupboard. I don't have hardly anything digitalized unless I already scanned it on the job to send it to the New York Times. So from 3 or 4 rolls of film that I shot a day, of those 3 or 4 rolls of film, I sent 4 or 5 pictures to the New York Times or to Newsweek.
So from the Kosovo War, you have a lot more.
There's a lot more material, yeah, because you know you shoot, you might do 2 or 3 stories that day, but you only end up sending one of those stories to the New York Times or to Newsweek. Those are digitalized. I did that myself, you know, on the job at the hotel every evening, sending with captions, which are, for example, these captions that we see today. But you know, it's less than 10% of the work. The rest of the work is still a negative.
So what would it take? I mean, it's $1 million question. Yeah. I understand, Wade, but nevertheless, if people are watching and our institutions have invested in your first exhibition, and if this is a beginning of an endeavor to digitize yours and many other people's material, something we're trying to do also with Reporting House Museum, what would it take? Tell me, what would it take to digitize that?
You know, what I think is by far the most important is there needs to be an archive, a state national archive of as much material as they can get their hands on. And it needs to be available for the future generations, for research. It needs to be available for people looking for family members. It needs to be available for free publications, for books. It needs to be available to all. Digitalized in a sense, a public national library archive of anything they can get their hands on.
But guys like you are very jealous and motherly about your archive.
That is true.
You would be.
That is true.
Would you yourself give your Kosovo archive to some center here that would have started digitizing with young people out of courses of photography or history? Would you mentor that? Would you be available for mentoring that project?
In 20 years' time, I might not be here. And what's going to be with my archive? It's sitting in a cupboard. You know, this needs to be done now, because in 20 years' time, you're going to find, somebody's going to find these sheets with negatives in them, and the only thing at the top is written the date. And without doing and starting this process now, it's going to be too late, and all the material is just going to disappear. I think it's probably one of the most important things that Kosovo can do for itself, for the future generations, because you know, people are going to question the questions, and people are going to question the narrative, as we do question always history. Did that really happen? Did this really happen? But, you know, as the Jews have done after the Second World War, they have been very sure to document what happened, so it cannot be questioned. And that's the importance of this documentation. So, you know, there needs to be somehow a format of, would I give up? I don't want to see my archive end up in some dusty trash bin because nobody understands its value. At the moment, I'm not doing anything with it, and I'm probably not going to do anything with it. Somebody needs to do something with it.
Thanks very much, Wade, for the interview. Kaq kemi për sonte, vazhdonim na shumë kallzo.com dhe në emisionin radhës mirë mbetëshi.